people say they wanted a recording of the discussion today. So, so I'm giving credit to this topic today to Carolyn Wayner. As many of you know in my emails, I always encourage you to schedule a meeting with me to brainstorm, and I love these brainstorming sessions. And Carolyn reached out and we were brainstorming about her business goals and, you know, future and everything. And the topic of ageism came up, and Ashton Applewhite came up, and she's like, Steve, do you know she's got this workbook on how we can have a conscious raising dialogue about ageism? And I was like, I had no idea. Let's do it, you know? So, so thank you, Carolyn, for bringing this up. But before we jump into the discussion today, I want everybody the opportunity to get to know you. So tell us a little bit about yourself and, you know, what's going on in your world these days.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to thank everybody for being here and being interested in this topic. And Steve, I want to thank you for having this program today, because we really do need to raise awareness of ageism, especially in the Baltimore, Washington area. We have so many organizations that serve older adults, and I think we collectively can be a real force for change. So thank you. Real quick, I got my certificate on aging from Hopkins about 6 years ago, and learned so much through that about all the different aspects of aging and all the organizations that serve older adults. I went to work for one of the 2 villages in Baltimore. We only have 2, unlike DC, or I say DC area, which has 1 million. And I worked for one of the Baltimore villages for a couple years. And now I'm off on my own. I want to develop a program that uses design thinking to help older adults who want to maybe pursue an encore career or just find meaning and purpose in their retirement years.
Cool. Well, thanks, Carolyn. You know, the villages and everything you're talking about is sort of breaking the expected menu that most people have of what their next steps could be. And that's really, you know, in alignment with what we're going to talk about today. So let's see. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen, and I've sort of prepared some PowerPoints today to keep us on track. One thing that I just want to tell everybody about, it's a great feature for these Zoom meetings. I don't know if you notice at the bottom of my PowerPoint, but there's closed captioning that is going on. If you do your slides in Google Slides, there's a little closed captioning button at the bottom, and I am blown away at how accurate it is. So one added feature, we'll have some closed captioning today for the discussion, which will be great for the recording. So anyways, so hopefully most of you received some of the links that I sent out before the meeting. Some great videos, but most importantly, we sent out this workbook that Ashton Applewhite developed on doing a conscious raising program for ageism. And we're not going to follow this by the book, because quite honestly, with the large turnout that we have here, her model sort of was developed pre-COVID, and it was designed to sort of break up into small little discussion groups. My hope is after this initial meeting that we do that online, either in Remo or with Zoom rooms. But today, we're just going to sort of do an amended version of what Ashton laid out for us, and let's see where it goes, and let's see what develops, okay? So let me first go through a few opening slides, and then this is totally going to be an interactive presentation. All right, and Carolyn, you jump in if there's anything that you want to comment on any of these slides. So, you know, again, I took this right from Ashton's deck. What is ageism? Ageism is a stereotyping and discrimination on the basis of a person's age. We think of ageism as being primarily for older adults because it is, but there are plenty of instances where young people are discriminated against upon their age as well. You know, so it's not just because you say ageism doesn't mean it's exclusive to being older. But this is the quote from Ashton that I love. It's a hallmark. Its hallmark is the irrational insistence that older people are other, not us, or even the future us. And that is the mind-blowing thing, that there could be any kind of discrimination against older adults because it's what we all aspire to be, okay? So enough on that, but hopefully it plants some seeds. So what is consciousness raising? Again, according to Ashton, a tool that uses the power of personal experiences to unpack the unconscious prejudices and call for social change. And I think we're going to see today that there's a lot of things that we do that are very ageist, and we're not doing it in an evil or discriminatory way. It's just because our brains have been unconsciously raised this way. And until we basically challenge this way of thinking, we're not going to be able to impact change. And again, what Ashton says, I love this, when prejudice and discrimination go unchallenged, they stop being identified as oppression and become normal or natural. Consciousness raising exposes these ways of thinking as social constructs that we can change. And so I'm hoping today's discussion for our little community here is just the first step. Okay, so that's sort of the intro. Now, what are we going to try to do here in the hour that we've got together? Well, if you look through the workbook, there are dozens of questions for discussion on ageism. Carolyn and I kind of put our heads together yesterday, and we sort of pulled out 5. I don't even know if we'll get through all 5, but we're going to take them on one at a time. And I've got them on the screen, but basically, we've categorized them into 5 different categories, okay? The first is personal experience. It's sort of like, okay, have I been discriminated or a loved one been discriminated based on age? Then the second one, which I wanted to make sure, we may never get past the second one, because this, I think for most of the people in our audience, this is the most important. It's ageism in our jobs, okay? We're here trying to promote senior living services, and there's tremendous ageism against what we're providing. And it's quite honestly why a lot of people say, I'm not ready yet, when you sort of give them this great service, you know? There's the language of aging. The way that we talk to each other can be ageist, whether we intend it to be or not. And then there's actual segregation, where we segregate the ages, you know, old from young. And why do we do that? And what are some of the solutions? And then lastly, the symbols of aging, you know, hearing aids, wheelchairs, walkers, and canes. Even though young people use all of these devices, they have these stigmas associated with aging. So let's jump into the first question I've got on the screen here, which is, have you personally experienced ageism? And I'm going to go to Q&A. I got to pull up my Q&A. Again, I can't monitor chat, but if you want to make a comment on this topic and you don't want to raise your hand and comment, type it in the Q&A box. But let's see, Deb Marimer has her hand raised, and so I'm gonna select her. Deb, did you want to make a comment?
No, I'm sorry, Steve. I didn't even realize my hand was raised.
Oh, that's okay, but at least now everybody knows this is what happens when you raise your hand, and we want we want to hear from everyone. But Deb, it's great to hear your voice. I haven't seen you in person for quite some time, and I want to actually, I'd like to take this moment, and I'm probably going to tear up here, but those of you who don't know Deb is part of Buckley's for Seniors, an organization called Buckley's for Seniors. It was founded by a friend of ours, Buckley Fricker, who was just horribly killed, several years ago. And Deb, I just want everybody to remember Buckley and what a wonderful person she was.
Thank you, Steve. She was indeed. I miss her every day. I miss Ginny. But we carry on, and what we offer, I think, is a real antidote to ageism. So I'm really happy to be on this.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Deb. And now you know how to raise your hand.
Thanks.
Okay. Okay, I got a couple more hands being raised, and I am super psyched to talk to this next person because talking about a pioneer in the field, Austin Heyman. Austin, can you, I hope you intentionally wanted to raise your hand. Austin, okay. While I'm hopefully waiting for Austin to come on, who's the founder of InnerAges and the winner of the Grows Humanitarian Award, Catherine Alexander types in, yes, I am 30 years old, working in senior living for 10 years. Other directors view me differently. Yeah, so, it's funny, here we are in this field of aging and how a younger person might be discriminated against because they are because of their age. Wes Moore, here, Austin, if you unmute yourself, we'd love to hear from you. But Wes Morrison has got his hand raised, so I'm hoping we can get Wes on, and or any of you that would like to sort of share any personal experience where you've had to deal with ageism.
Hi, I'm Wes Morrison, Washington, D.C., and I'm a volunteer with AARP, Age Friendly Cities, and some other senior organizations, and specifically into LGBTQ seniors. My experience, and I have talked about this in several places, I'll try and make it short. I got a pair of new glasses about a year or so ago. And, it takes 2 weeks or so for you to adjust, particularly if there was a prescription change. I couldn't see out of the reading part. And I finally said, okay, I got to check on this. I took my glasses back to the optometrist that made the glasses, and they looked at it and said, these are too strong for you. And I'm going, how's that possible? So I took it back to the ophthalmologist that gave the prescription and asked one of their people to put it on the machine. And she said, I don't need to put it on the machine. These are much too strong for you. Where'd you get them? I said, here, because it was a hospital that I go to for my ophthalmology. So I made an appointment with the ophthalmologist and went in, and I said, I can't read out of the reading portion of these glasses. And I said, I've never had a problem before. And the doctor replied, oh, I know what happened. Our interns and residents feel that if you are 60 and over, that you should have a stronger prescription than what the machine indicates.
Oh my God.
And I said, you mean there are people walking around falling down steps, taking the wrong medication and other things because some young intern decided you needed more power in your glances than the machines indicated? And she said, yes. And I told her, I said, you know, I belong to some senior organizations. I will let everybody know that this is a dangerous ageism.
Wow. You know, what a great story. I've never heard something quite like that. And thanks a lot for sharing that, Wes. And I think as we brainstorm about ways that we can combat ageism, you know, and you think about sort of talking to one of these interns, again, their heart is probably in the right place, but if you told them, what if you gave your grandparent a stronger prescription, which you know they can't see correctly out of, and they fell, you know, making it personal. But thanks a lot, Wes. And it looks like Austin, are you on?
Yeah, I'm on, yes.
Awesome.
Great to see you, Steve.
Yeah.
So my little story is simple. I go to Maine, Booth Bay Harbor in Maine in the summers, and a few years ago, I would go down to the drugstore, the Rite Aid drugstore, to buy the New York Times in the morning, and there was a clerk there. I guess she might have been in her early 50s, and she would always greet me, and she would say, "How are you today, young man?" And I was at that point probably in my late 70s, early 80s, and I just cringed, and I didn't say anything. Well, I never had the occasion to. What I was going to say to her, but I never got a chance to do that because I never saw her, was, you know, I'm old, but it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's the other thing I wanted to mention, as all of us on this call with you know that everybody is struggling with the word senior. And I have been in more meetings and more discussions of what can we use instead of the word senior. It's an unresolved and challenging question.
Yeah, and this is great. And I figured some of these topics would intersect, but you know, this relates to the language of aging. And I think, you know, again, this waitress or the person that you were talking to, this was not evil spirited. They thought it was being polite or encouraging, but it's sort of like, it's the same way when somebody talks like a baby to an older adult in a senior living community. It can be disparaging, you know, but I'm so psyched that you're on this call, Austin. And for those of you who don't know, Austin was a true pioneer in developing intergenerational programs with creating interages. How many years ago did you create interages?
34 years ago. 34.
Wow. Yeah. Now we know intergenerational topics are much more widespread, but that was truly innovative back then. Thank you.
Thank you.
And okay, it looks like we've got Nicholas Keplinger. Nicholas, I'm hoping, there you go.
Hello, how are you all? Nice to meet you. My name is Nicholas. I work for the Howard County government. I work at a 50-plus center in Howard County. Really exciting to be here today. Thank you for having me. So an example that came to mind, you mentioned ageism, even with younger people. I know me on a personal level, I collect antiques and military items for their history and for research. And at times when I go to these events, generally those who I work with or deal with are quite a bit older than myself. And I find that when I am usually approach them with questions or items on their table and ask them questions, generally I kind of get a head turn, kind of get a snort, you know, kind of negative comment, you know, wondering, you know, what's this guy doing here? He doesn't know much about this stuff. But in reality, I work very hard about it. I research my items, I study it, I share my knowledge with others. And sometimes it feels a little negative, even in my own personal hobby. I feel discriminated because of my age. I don't know a lot about things that happened 80 years ago, such as, World War II is an area of interest. And I kind of learned how to deal with that and how to take that when I'm approached with that and how to respond. So that's kind of something I wanted to share, in my hobby, my interest.
And there's another question that, thank you, Nicholas. And it almost makes me wonder if part of the reason there's that reverse ageism is because people have lived their lives sort of having this discrimination, being the new guy in an industry or a field, and having the older folks sort of, well, what do you know, kid? And then when you rise to that occasion, do you just inadvertently, subconsciously do that? So I'm gonna flip the slide to the next topic, which is, has ageism hindered people from using your services or working with your organization? So I know this occurs, so I'd love to hear some stories of where, because your business or your organization or your senior housing complex has the word aging, retirement, senior associated with it, do people stay away from it? But while I'm waiting for some folks to respond, Elva Roy types in the comment section, I propose using senior. So it's, instead of S, you put a Z at the beginning, senior, instead of senior. Senior kind of looks like zenith, which means the top of their game, and differentiates older seniors from high school and college seniors. I love that suggestion, Elva. And again, I think there's no right or wrong answer on any of these things, but it is also interesting how being a high school senior is viewed very positively. Nobody doesn't want to use that term, or being a college senior, yet being a senior can create so much controversy. Okay, Mark Ash from Right at Home has got his hand raised. Mark?
Thanks, Steve, and good afternoon, everybody. Hope everyone's having a happy Friday. There's a couple points I wanted to make real quickly. First, in speaking about older folks or younger folks, we should use those terms older and younger because they are factual. That is, it's based on when you were born. If you were born before someone, you are older than them. Those are facts. So that is not a relative term or subjective term, it is fact. But the other thing, you ask about ageism as it relates to using our services. So we are a home care agency, and our company was formed to provide care for seniors, but many of our franchises, including our franchise, thinks of our business outside of only serving seniors. So, but many of the brochures that we put out only have pictures of seniors on them. So if a 56-year-old like myself is looking for help after a surgery or something like that, I might look at that brochure and say, wait a minute, I'm not that old. I'm going to look for somebody who provides care for younger folks. So yes, I think ageism can affect that in the opposite direction. So I'll shut up.
No, great comments as always, Mark. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I mean, it's very difficult to create marketing messages that can sort of combat the stigma that might be associated with the services that we are providing. The one thing that Mark brings up about pictures is, the old adage, a picture tells 1,000 words, is that and this is sort of a little bit different direction than Mark was sort of going in terms of a home care agency providing services to all ages. But one of the things is that one of the ways that a company can sort of promote themselves, so with I'll use Right at Home for example. Right at Home is a company name that doesn't have the word seniors in it. Okay, great, all right, but what is right at home, who is this for? And by having sort of photographs of the people that you're taking care of, it can enable you not to insert the language of elder and senior into your marketing without using those actual words. A long-winded comment. And on that topic, Susan Rannick writes, Elder Nourish provides one of the best services out there. I wonder how many people are reluctant to avail themselves of her service because elder is in the name. So it's interesting. And I think there's another slide that I've got coming up here on this topic. The word elder in general has been seen to be a revered positive word, okay? The word elderly can have a radically different meaning, okay? And again, it's a catch-22. Sometimes we've got to integrate these words into our marketing so that people know. It's sort of like what Mark was saying. You have old people, you have young people. My product and service provides services to older people. So sometimes you got to be descriptive, you know, but again, if we can combat ageism, these things won't matter as much, okay? But good comment there, Susan. Rebranding is a fortune. Marketing people must be mindful. Absolutely. The one thing that I don't want, because you guys know I'm an advocate for all marketers out there, I don't want this discussion to sort of lead you to sort of be like, well, we got to rename our company. You know, the goal of today is to talk about ageism and, you know, how can we as a community educate everybody else out there that growing old is a natural and positive thing, okay? All right, let's see. Okay, we've got a hand raised here, and it looks like it's Judith Shaw. Judith.
Hi, Steve. Good evening, afternoon, everyone. So I think one of the things that we can do as seniors and as the aging population is age as gracefully as we can. You know, show the younger generation that it's okay, because if life lasts and death pass, they're going to age too. So I think one of the things we can do as this gracious aging population is to, if we can, show the younger generation that it's okay and you can age well and you can age gracefully. It's about taking care of yourself, physically, mentally, and spiritually.
This is great, Judith, and I'm glad you brought this up. And I want to kind of not push back, but I want to dive deeper in what you're saying, because number one, I totally agree. We need to be role models for the people in our lives and what have you. But and we do view sometimes, like when we say successful aging, graceful aging, it's connoted to mean that I'm healthy, vibrant, and active. But what happens when that healthy, vibrant, and active person has a fall, they're now in a wheelchair, you know, they still need to be viewed as aging gracefully and successfully aging, like, because we can't, I think that's where sometimes things get derailed is that if somebody has a healthcare challenge, it's sort of like, oh man, you know, and we need to also celebrate the role models who have had issues in mobility and healthcare issues, but they're still out there living a purposeful life, you know.
I totally agree. I call these folks soldiers because they're yet still pressing on. And things happen in life. You know, we have falls and we slip and God knows I that's one of my greatest fears. I'm 64 years old. And I can say this because I don't live behind any sheets of shame. I've been living with HIV for 27 years. So resilience, it's a push. It's a push, but I feel like I'm worth the push. And I set that example with my peers in the community of aging, because these things, if they're going to happen, they're going to happen. The piece is that we as a community, we have to look after our aging people. We have to, because there are aging folks out there that's right now, that's sitting alone in a corner somewhere by themselves, be it in a nursing home or be it in their home. So I totally agree.
Man, and thank you, Judith, so much. And, you know, like when you think about this topic and think about, you know, the HIV, the discrimination against folks with HIV when that epidemic came about was horrible, you know. But man, so great to have you. And I've got Pamela Silberman's hand raised.
Thanks, Steve. So I wanted to comment on, as a dementia specialist and somebody who's run multiple support groups for people living with dementia, that there definitely is a lack of services because of young onset and or early onset. I've had people in my support groups that have been diagnosed in their late 40s and early 50s who still have young children. And one particular story I can relate is that particular person had young children, and the children wanted to receive counseling. And everywhere the parent looked to find out about services for children whose parent is affected by dementia, that had nothing for young children. It had nothing for even kids in their teens. It was always assumed that they were adult children or even older adults and spouses. So there really has to be more services out there.
No, and multi-generational services. You know, it's funny, you know, I mean, we're talking about ageism, and we expect, you know, that the conversation to be exclusively against how the old are discriminated against. But then what you see is that when younger people move into our arena legitimately wanting to be a part of it, and that how there can be discrimination against them. And we actually did a wonderful story in Sourcebook years ago where there was a young woman with a disability who was being cared for by her older parents, and it was too difficult for them to continue caring for her. But because she was under the age restriction, they couldn't move into a senior building as a family, okay? And, you know, finally one building brought them in, and this young woman was just an amazing resource for the residents there. Thanks so much, Pamela. Oh, whoops. Okay, I hope I didn't hang up on anybody there. Okay, okay, let's see. Here, let me flip the slide. Man, I knew the time was gonna fly when we were doing this. Our next question that we have is, how do you feel when someone says, "You look great for your age"? This is, you know, Austin sort of addressed this one. Carolyn, you want to make a comment on this?
Oh, sure. So the other morning I was listening to NPR Morning Edition, and they, the announcer said, and today is Halle Berry's birthday. She's 54 today, but she doesn't look it. And of course, all the alarm bells went off in my head like, oh, that's ageist. So I actually wrote to Morning Edition, and I said, love you all, listen to you all the time, but just be really careful about how you present aging. And I said, well, what should 54 look like? And so I thought that was a really prime example of how they were trying to be complimentary, but they were being ageist and completely unaware.
Yeah, I mean, I think unlike racism and sexism, ageism is oftentimes, it doesn't have an evil intent. But when we use language like that and we continue to use it, it just it permeates an ageist point of view. Catherine Cordion, Catherine.
Kathy Corridon.
Oh, Kathy, sorry.
That's
I'm
okay.
just reading your name there.
Yeah, I didn't realize it said Catherine on it. I get that all the time. I'm approaching 70 and people say, oh my God, you don't look that old. And because I'm doing things and preparing for semi-retirement, people have this sense of disbelief that, why would you be doing that? Because you look and act so young. Because that's something that you do when you're doing a good job of planning and preparing for the next level of transition that I want to take, I want to know what I have to know before I need to know it. But people all the time say to me, oh my God, you don't look that old. And earned every one of these gray hairs, and I love being the age I'm at. So it is really always stops me in my tracks.
And thank you, Kathy, and congrats on your pending retirement. But I got a little tip for Kathy and everybody else out there that I've had a lot of fun with over the years. Instead of saying that you're preparing for retirement, replace retirement with the word graduation. And so the people that I've shared this with have had amazing results. And so I'll take back a couple of Halloweens ago. One of my neighbors was at the Halloween party, and she's like, sort of apologetically, yeah, I'm in retirement, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing. And I said, for the rest of the party, instead of saying that, I want you to tell people, I just graduated, and come back and tell me what the response is. And within a half hour, she came back with a big smile on her face. And she was just like, this is amazing. When I say that I just graduated, they're graduated from where? What are you going to do? And the dialogue was much more positive. Okay, so good example of using language. Jamila Blake.
Oh, it's Jamila Blake.
Jamila, okay, sorry. Not good at reading.
It's okay. It's right. I think also comes to mind when the slide comes up is that a lot of times people will say you look great, I think more to women than men. Almost like people have this certain like perception or notion that women are supposed to look a certain type of way when they age. So that's my only comment that I have.
Yeah, sort of combining sort of the ageism, sexism together can be a double whammy for the for ladies in some way. Yeah, so that's great. Let's see. I'm going to read a few comments, and I tell you what, I'm going to advance to the next slide here. Oh, okay. Let's see. Okay. I'm gonna read that in a moment, but first I want to read Adrienne Robinson's comment. As social services caseworker trying to link older adults to services in the community, I've been told by some folks that I approach that they do not need senior services, or I am often told I don't need that yet. That's precisely what we're all facing in our field, and you really articulated it well, Adrienne, is that we hear I'm not ready yet so often because there's this definition of senior and old, and if I don't fit that definition, then I'm not ready yet, okay? And it's sort of like, I don't know, there's probably some clever analogy out there. If I needed some sort of healthcare treatment, like that would help me live a better life, I don't know if I would say, I'm not ready yet for that, and that's what I think a lot of our services are. Our services are tools to enable people to live more purposeful lives. And we just have the double whammy that they're associated with age, and there's age bias out there. Let's see. Okay, Catherine Alexander says, our company deals with affordable housing with many cultures. I notice how other cultures treat elders differently. They honor their elderly. yes, there are definitely cultural differences. Okay, the next, what we're moving into next is sort of age segregation. And before the event, Connie S., I'm not going to read everything here, but Connie S. sent in an email, and it said, "Is it time to retire the elderly when referring to older persons? This term is frequently used in economics and other scientific literature, public policy, and discourse. While the word elderly was initially introduced as a replacement for old, it has taken an objectionable feeble inability to work connotation to many." And this sort of deals with the language of aging, but also the element of age segregation. So the next question is, do you have friends of all ages or mostly peers? What's the basis for your cross-generational friendship? And Susan, it doesn't need to relate to this question, but you've got your hand raised, so I'm going to bring Susan Rannick on. Susan?
I even forgot, you're moving so quickly. My comment, and this, I base my own experience on this, my own faux pas. We don't know what we don't know. A lot of people don't know the difference between assisted living and long-term care. They don't know the difference between skilled and companion care. There are people in the audience who don't know. I know I didn't know when I was heading Grows. I didn't know the difference between a lot of things. And when my aunt had a stroke in Florida, my cousin called me and he wanted, I thought he might need assistance. So I reached out to Susie Murphy from Deborah Levy and told her the whole story. I asked her if she had a caregiver she knew of in the Florida area, because she was, you know, the East Coast director. And she said, does she need an aging life care manager? And I immediately said, no, not at this point. And I stopped and I realized the folly. How do I know that? At least put it out there as an option. And too often a lot of us do this, you know, no, I'm not interested. No, I'm not interested. We don't know what we don't know. When I would evaluate people as in clinical work, and they'd say, oh, I don't need speech. And I'd say, but you haven't heard the menu. So I'm just saying we need to be willing to listen and to learn more, and then to find the appropriate words to share with others. That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
I love it. And your comments, Susan, in the Q&A relating to words and meanings and how they change. We've never seen this more in our history with, you know, some of the diversity issues that are out there. We're constantly evolving, and what we say today will be different in the future. But thanks for your comments, Susan. And this is a great comment from Sharon on this topic here in the Q&A. Sharon Caspola says, I lost my mom at 24 and she was 54. I've made friends with women 30 years older than me, mostly nurses. She was a nurse too. And I've worked in hospice. And I think Sharon presents a great example of how and why crossing the generations and having friends outside our age-related peer group is so important. The value that those friends that she made that were older to her, having lost a parent at a young age, but then again, relating to professions. You know, I mean, there is nothing better than connecting a young nurse with an older nurse, okay? The experience pipeline there is amazing, and the back and forth can be fantastic. So thanks for sharing that, Sharon. And let's see, Elva Roy has got her hand raised. Elva? Elva? Well, Elva.
Unmute. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Hey, Elva.
Hey there. So I wanted to give a shout out to an organization that promotes intergenerational friendships, and it's called Big and Mini, MINI.org. And they match older people with university students. And they wanted me to promote this to a group that I lead here in my city. And before I would do that, I always vet it by joining myself. So I went to their website, bigandmini.org, and signed up to be matched. And I was matched with a 19-year-old UT Austin student, actually no, Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. Daniel Formella is his name. And we have video calls every Saturday since March at 10 o'clock on Saturday mornings. And it has just been the most wonderful experience. And I heartily recommend that.
Wow.
They set it up, it's free, it doesn't cost anything. And they set it up basically to address loneliness and isolation, not only for the older people, but also, you know, research is showing that the most lonely generation is those 18 to 24.
Well, especially now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Elva, if you don't mind, shoot me an email to steve@proaging.com. I would love to feature this program, and even better, feature you and your partner, your college partner, on one of these digital discussions. I think that would be absolutely fascinating, and we can also help get the word out about this wonderful program that you're a part of.
Thank you, Steve. And that would be great. We were interviewed on NBC's Today Show and some other TV shows, so we'd be happy to do that.
We're definitely not at the level of NBC, but I will tell you something, and this is something for everybody to realize, is that on average, the people attending these digital discussions work with 75 different seniors and families on a monthly basis. So, you know, 100 people on a call like this, you're actually reaching 7,500 potential families, and we can make a really big impact. And, but Elva, I can't wait to feature this. So thank you so much.
Sure.
And that as we near the 1 o'clock hour, one of the things that I want to sort of remind everyone of is that this is the goal of us today, is to figure out ways we can come together to address these ageist topics that we're talking about. Let's spread the word. Let's be brave enough to kind of talk to people about these topics. Okay. Okay. So let me, because we're running down to the last 10 minutes, let me advance to the next slide. I think this is my last one, and then we'll just go to 1 o'clock. Anything goes, but I like this one, and Carolyn and I both really like this one, because it's how would you feel about using a cane, a walker, or a wheelchair? And what this question really addresses more than anything is the symbols of aging. You know, like you've seen the symbol of, you know, the guy hunched over with the cane. It's like an icon. The guy of elderly. It's a guy hunched over with a cane. You know, but how do folks feel about using these devices? And my question to you too, I know many of you in the audience, either temporary or permanently, have had to use a cane or a walker, okay? When you weren't, quote unquote, older, you used it on a temporary basis. How did people approach you if you were going through rehab and you needed to use a walker? Like, did you find that you were being addressed in perhaps an ageist, albeit humorous manner? So those are some things to chat about. Okay, so what I'm going to say is, guys, jump in, and I would love to have any comments, questions, suggestions on what we can do to kind of move the needle on ageism moving towards the future. And what I'm going to do with Positive Aging Sourcebook is we are definitely going to start addressing this in every printed issue of Sourcebook, but also online. There's several things that over the last few months that I've reflected on. Ageism is one of them. Diversity and inclusion is another. LGBT elder issues is another. And so we want to make sure that these are a fixture in our communication. Adrian Robinson says, I do not use any of those currently, but I believe I would feel stronger and better equipped. Yes, exactly. And that's, many of you have probably had challenging conversations with your loved ones around you, and who might need a walker to be safe and stronger, but because of the stigma associated with it, they don't want to use it, but they are putting themselves at risk. And potentially that walker could be permanent if they have a fall. And I think that's the point, is that these are tools, and are there creative ways that we can make them not associated with aging as much. And so, you know, one, let's see, Joe Sperling says, most of my friends may be within 10 to 15 years of our current age because we are getting older together. But I also have older friends that I met socially and younger ones due to meeting them through our children. Yeah, I mean, I think friendships, you know, our peer group, just by the nature of, you know, the schools we go to, the places we work, we may have a peer group that is within our age. But I think if you look at any hobbies or interests, or these days children, you know, how many grandchildren are raising their grandchildren? And, you know, oftentimes you will see grandparents befriending parents, and it's not because of their age, it's the common interest in the well-being of children. Joe also says, there are walkers that are stand up rather than bend over, and they look a lot better. Yes, yeah, that being in that hunched over position like the icon is, it's not healthy, okay? It really isn't, no matter what age you are. Ken Silverstein says, I always say I'm too young to have such old children. Yeah, but you know, Ken, that like, it's sort of like, I forgot who said it in the beginning. There are descriptors between old and young, but sometimes it's sort of like language like that is unintentionally one of the things that we, you know, that can lead to sort of ageist belief. And let's see, I'm checking other comments. Joe says, again, there are also scooters that look like motorcycles. Yeah, you know, one idea that you guys know, I'm an entrepreneur and sort of pseudo inventor out there. And my dad and I once worked on a project to create a stroller that could also be used as a walker, okay? Now, here's the benefit of that. If you've used a stroller recently, you can't hang a diaper bag on a stroller without it tipping over. And so our concept was, what if we could create a stroller that met the medical requirements of being also a walker? So families could use that stroller and it would be more secure than their regular stroller. But then when they're done with it, they could donate it to be used as a walker. And then the benefit of the older adult is they are pushing around what looks like a stroller and is a stroller, and it doesn't have as much of a stigma of, it looks like, oh, she's just pushing her grandchild around. Meanwhile, she could have her groceries in the stroller, okay? So let's see. Whoa, it's 12:59. Okay, guys, that's it for today. I got through most of the questions, and I really appreciate everybody contributing. Carolyn, I appreciate you bringing this topic. How did you feel like it went?
I thought it was terrific. I thought the comments were just on point, and I just thank everybody for really digging into this, and I know that we can really make some change. So thank you, Steve, and thanks everybody.
Great. So thank you, Carolyn, for bringing this up. Thanks everybody for this little social experiment that we did, but I really think it was meaningful. I'm going to follow up as quickly as I can with the recording of this, with the chat transcript for everybody. And then what I'm going to sort of give you as your homework assignment is, feel free to reach out to me if you've got some ideas on how we can keep this ball going. How could we, with our community here, really be a shining star on how to address ageism as a community? And I'd love to tackle this, tackle it together with everybody. So I'm open to comments and outreach, and let's see where this takes us. Most of you are on my email. Next week, we got another jam-packed week with some really good topics. I know on Thursday, we're going to talk about adult daycare in the pandemic and beyond. And on Friday, I've got a, she calls herself a assisted fashionista. So she has created a beautiful face mask with the, where you can see it's clear face mask. She's also created a fashionable bag that can be hung from a walker. So it kind of stems back to this stuff. So I look forward to seeing you guys next week at one of our discussions, and thanks a lot today. Thanks a lot, Carolyn. Okay.